Good afternoon, everybody. It's fight week again. Well, it was a fight week last week, but it's a better fight week this week. Of course, last week we only really had Jürgen Bremer defending his WBA regular title against Krasniqi in Germany. But this week we're back to business with quite a few good fights over the course of the weekend. The main one I want to talk about in this video, though, is the upcoming IBF welterweight title fight between the current champion Kell Brook and the challenger Jojo Dan. Now, for anyone who's watching this who doesn't really know a lot about Jojo Dan, he's a bit like, it's a bit like Lucian Bute in many respects. Originally born in Romania, now based in Canada. Got a respectful fan base over in Canada, from what I can gather. And you know, he's a managed challenger for a reason. He's no pushover by any stretch of the imagination, but he is a limited, or very much limited fighter anyway, in my opinion. Now, I'll just focus on the challenger first of all. Just looking at his recent record over the course of his last 5 fights, I don't really find 3 of them really significant because they were pretty much stay busy fights against opponents that you would expect Jojo Dan to dispatch of or beat quite easily, which he did. The only opponent on there that may ring some bells on these shores is Kevin Bizier. Now, he's fought Kevin Bizier twice. He's won by split decision twice in these last 5 fights over Kevin Bizier. But he has also been knocked down in the second of those fights in the 7th round. Now, from watching, I didn't watch the first fight between Jojo Dan and Kevin Bizier, but I did watch the second fight between the two of them. Now, me personally, and this is not because I'm English and I'm biased towards Kell Brook, I don't see anything special about Jojo Dan whatsoever. I just said a minute ago, he's a very limited fighter, and he is. He's an extremely, extremely limited fighter. I mean, no disrespect to Kevin Bizier, but Kevin Bizier he's no Kell Brook. You know, he's not nowhere near that level. And yet Kevin Bizier found success on quite a regular basis throughout the course of the 2 fights with Jojo Dan. And one thing that surprises me the most about Jojo Dan is he's quite telepathic in the way he throws his punches. You know, he's easily readable for someone that can time or can move, such as Kell Brook can. And also, the one thing that will concern me if I was Jojo Dan going into this weekend's fight as well is I think his inside game is absolutely terrible. You know, when people come up inside on the inside, he's quite easy to hit, not only to the body but as well as the chin. And he's not very good at tying opponents up either. I mean, we saw in Kell Brook's last fight against Sean Porter, the one thing that Kell Brook did superbly was every time Sean Porter got in his face, tried to let the bombs go on the inside, his Kell Brook tied him up, did a great job, got his distance back before landing the cleaner shots, which is his game plan for winning that fight. But Jojo Dan can't do that. He's not very good at tying opponents up. His inside punching game's not all that great either. And he's, like I say, the way he throws his punches, he's quite telepathic. Anyone who has the ability to move on the inside and time the punches, such as Kell Brook does, will give Jojo Dan all the problems in the world and then some. And that is quite evident. You only have to watch Jojo Dan's recent fights to realise how limited his game is, especially on the inside. If I'm Kell Brook Saturday night, I don't go out there looking to necessarily box my way in. I go out there knowing full well Jojo Dan's going to throw his southpaw jab, and then he likes to throw either the straight left or the left hook around the guard. That is the way he pretty much fights for the whole 12 rounds. He doesn't really use a lot of angles unless he's already off balance when he's throwing a counter shot. He doesn't really set anything particular great up with head movement or great footwork. You know, he's really, really just basic fundamental. I'll jab you with a southpaw jab, maybe double it up, straight left hand around the guard. That is pretty much his punch selection. Now, one thing I've criticised Kell Brook about in the past is he can be that way as well. I think Kell Brook over the first 3 rounds against any welterweight in the world gives them all the problems in the world. Kell Brook over 12 rounds, I think he can become a bit readable. Although in the Sean Porter fight, he did a great job of being able to switch it up at certain times, which I was quite impressed with. But with Jojo Dan, there's been readable and then there's been overly readable. And Jojo Dan is just so telepathic when he throws the shots. and I wouldn't say he's got the fastest of hands either. So we've had a bit of, not hype, but we've had kind of people saying this week, Jojo Dan, don't underestimate him. I don't underestimate any fighter, but when I look at a fighter going up against a fighter who's clearly a class gap in between the two of them in terms of technical ability, speed and movement, then I'm looking for something that makes the fighter that is obviously on the wrong end of that talent gap, and I'm looking for something that makes him special, that can overcome that gap and lay it on his opponent. And I don't see that. I really don't. I don't see Jojo Dan being able to give Kell Brook any problems whatsoever, to be honest. If Kell Brook has come back from his injury successfully, I would fancy him to make a statement Saturday night. And that statement would be, I think he stops Jojo Dan in the first half of the fight, just maybe kind of round 5 or round 6. Kell Brook hits hard on the inside, and if you give him the room and the time to hit you on the inside, he will punish you. And Jojo Dan, like I say, his inside game looks pretty terrible from what I've seen. So I would fancy Kell Brook to be able to get on the inside, time the punches, and I would fancy him to land something quite big on the chin of Jojo Dan sooner or later. Whether Jojo Dan gets knocked out or gets back up and continues for the 12, I don't know, but I just don't see it. I don't see anything special about Jojo Dan whatsoever. And that's harsh for me to say, because I'm always the first person to be sceptical about people saying, oh, this guy's a tomato can, or he's going to be a pushover. But like I say, I've watched some of Jojo Dan's recent fights, and I just don't see it. I do not see it at all. So there's nothing else I can really prop about Jojo Dan. I mean, from Kell Brook's perspective, obviously the big concern with Kell Brook, he's coming back from obviously being stabbed whilst he was on holiday in Tenerife. Got stabbed to the leg, so we're obviously looking at Kell Brook Saturday night in terms of has he still got his movement in full fledged? Has he still got the bounce? Is he comfortable? Is he still being affected mentally by the injury? We don't know these things. They're the things that we're going to find out about Kell Brook Saturday night. So, but like I said, I mean, I want to give Jojo Dan a chance. I really do. I want to sit here and I want to say it's going to be a competitive fight. I just don't see it. I'm looking at my notes and what I've wrote down when I've been watching Jojo Dan's fights, all the positives that I'm trying to take. There's not many. In many respects, I think he lost to Kevin Bizier in his last fight anyway. I think it probably should be Kell Brook versus Kevin Bizier in this fight. But hey ho, it is what it is. In terms of Kell Brook's recent fights, I don't really need to go into a lot of detail about that. I think a lot of people, even stateside, obviously would have known what happened in regards to Sean Porter. Me personally, not being harsh on Kell Brook, but I had the Porter fight level. I agree with the judging scores of Dave Parris. I had it 114 to 114, although it was a really close fight and it could have gone either way. But I'm thoroughly delighted, of course, that Kell Brook got the decision. He certainly was the cleaner punching out of the two that night. And like I say, every time Sean Porter threatened to really get on the inside of Kell Brook and do some damage, Kell Brook did an absolute superb job of tying him up and not letting him get any shots off. And then on the breaks, or when the distance was back in Kell Brook's favour, he did a superb job of timing the shots and hitting Porter with some very accurate, clean punching throughout the 12 rounds. And then the thing that most impressed me about that, I think, was the fact that come the 10th, 11th, 12th rounds, normally we would expect Kell Brook, with the way he fights, to maybe not be the one coming on at the end of the fight, but the one maybe just pacing it down to the end of the 12th round. But as we all saw, it was Kell Brook actually coming on strong in the 11th and 12th rounds of that Sean Porter fight, which is something that really impressed me as well. So he was a deserved winner, even though it was a close fight. And I think he really did show his absolute class in that fight. The one thing I love about Kell Brook is his short, powerful punching. The way he just gets it off, he doesn't really swing his body into it. He's just naturally got the gift of short, inside, harmful, hurtful punches. And that's why I say that's why I truly believe this Saturday is only going one way, just because of Kell Brook's inside game compared to Jojo Dan's. Especially with, Kell Brook's not the most amazing heavy-handed fighter in the welterweight division. For example, I don't think he hits as hard as someone like Keith Thurman does, but he is accurate, and they're short, sharp punches. Someone like Jojo Dan, who's pretty terrible on the inside, walking onto a punch like that, I think he's not going to survive too many of those punches for 12 rounds. So, in terms of any of other Kell Brook's last 5 fights that could play any significance, you don't really want to look at fights where they've been involved with just stay busy fights like Kell Brook's. Robles fight was a stay busy fight. I didn't really think there was a need for the second Carson Jones fight. But the Senchenko fight, where of course he stopped Senchenko in the 4th round. Senchenko was a previous champion. You could look at that with some significance, but then you obviously see that Paulie Malignaggi stopped him. Paulie Malignaggi almost stops nobody, so it doesn't really impress me that much. Although on the actual performance himself, not forgetting what Senchenko did to Igiatan as well, that must be said. But just on the performance itself, it was a good performance, and he did what he had to do in style. So this weekend, to sum up my prediction, then I thoroughly expect Jojo Dan to not really offer a great deal. I'm sure he will try and show a bit of heart and try and get in the mix with Kell Brook for the first 3 or 4 rounds. But I just fancied Kell Brook to take control of the fight quite early on. I'd probably say after the cautious and the nerves are out of the way after Canada, the first 2-3 rounds, I would certainly fancy Kell Brook to take control from round 4 onwards for definite. And like I say, I'd fancy him to stop Jojo Dan by the 6th round. I would be surprised if it went 12, but if it does go 12, I'd still expect Kell Brook to be the victor on the scorecards. Let me know what you guys think. I'm going to do a few more videos today about this weekend's action coming up, but this one is certainly the one that excites me the most. It's just a shame I couldn't get the chance to be in Sheffield this weekend. I would love to have been there, but got a lot to pay out for this year. So peace out, leave a comment, subscribe.